Welcome to Investor Speed Run. Today we're breaking down Howard Marks' most recent memo, Shall We Repeal the Laws of Economics? But first, a quick primer on Howard Marks. He is an investor, writer, and co-founder of Oaktree Capital Management, whose memos are lauded by the likes of Warren Buffett. Let's dig in. Economics deals with finite resources, while politicians often make infinite promises. This contradiction highlights a fundamental issue. Governments cannot simply mandate economic outcomes in free economies. The complexity of economies makes it impossible for governments to engineer both prosperity and specific economic results. History is littered with examples of failed command economies. A striking example is the post-World War II division of Korea. The Soviet-influenced North Korea adopted a communist dictatorship, while U.S.-influenced South Korea embraced a capitalist democracy. Today, South Korea's GDP per capita is 25 times higher than North Korea's, whose citizens live in poverty. Free markets excel at efficiently allocating resources and boosting productivity, although they don't guarantee fair outcomes. This reality underscores the challenge of balancing economic principles with political aspirations. Vice President Harris recently announced plans to ban price gouging in the grocery industry, responding to a 26% increase in prices since 2019. This is a simplistic economic solution that may appeal to voters but lacks sound economic basis. Is there an alternative explanation to price gouging? The pandemic disrupted supply chains and increased consumer demand, while government COVID-19 relief further drove demand up further, all of which created a classic setup for inflation: too much money chasing too few goods. Price gouging typically involves sellers abusing market power or supply-demand imbalances, usually defined with vague terms like unfair or excessive. While there are clearly wrong seller behaviors, such as collusion and predatory pricing, existing laws already address these issues. Expanding regulations based on subjective definitions could prove difficult to enforce and potentially counterproductive. Two examples illustrate the risks of price controls. In Venezuela, such measures led to shortages as sellers couldn't afford to stock shelves at government-mandated prices. Similarly, New York City's rent controls have resulted in limited apartment growth and landlords leaving units vacant due to costs exceeding legal rent caps. Natural economic processes can regulate prices, where high prices encourage production and reduce demand. Policymakers help, however, by encouraging additional supply or by just avoiding overstimulating demand through excessive liquidity injected into the economy. Economic regulations often share common characteristics. 1. Well-intentioned goals with unforeseen consequences. 2. Government influence in market outcomes. 3. Potential for divisive rhetoric. 4. Politicians' self-exemption from regulatory effects. 5. Market distortions through artificial incentives. 6th, voter appeal by shifting blame to corporations. Such policies, while seemingly beneficial, can lead to unintended economic repercussions and deviate from free market principles. Other government actions, such as Trump's tax cuts, Harris' proposed homebuyer assistance, and California's $25 minimum wage for healthcare workers, have appeal but drive up federal spending. Keynesian economics advocates for increased spending to stimulate growth during downturns and reduced spending during prosperity to repay debt. However, the U.S. government's continuous spending and rising debt ignore this balance, defying economic principles. The role of government in the economy is complex and often debated. While governments don't directly create value or contribute to GDP, they heavily influence economic activity via taxation and spending. Government's lack of profit motive makes it challenging to measure their efficiency. Governments provide essential services and safety nets, but the extent of their involvement varies across political ideologies. This spectrum ranges from free market economies, which offer incentives and efficient resource allocation but can lead to uneven outcomes, to controlled markets, which aim for more uniform results but often face subpar economic performance. The balance between government intervention and market forces remains a central issue in economic policy debates. China's economic success over the past 45 years demonstrates a unique coexistence of communism and capitalism. With an average annual GDP growth of 9%, China has embraced pragmatism over strict ideology. The country's vibrant private sector, operating within a communist political system, now accounts for 60% of GDP, 70% of innovation, 80% of urban jobs, and 90% of new employment. This blend of political ideology and economic reality highlights China's adaptability in recognizing and leveraging market forces for national growth. To wrap up, let's highlight some of Mark's key lessons. Free markets outperform command economies, albeit with benefits spread unevenly. Government's role in free markets is widely debated with many trade-offs to consider, and politicians make appealing promises that often ignore economic reality. And free markets ultimately lead to more efficient resource allocation and higher standards of living. And that's Howard Marks's memo, Shall We Repeal the Laws of Economics? A 30-minute read in under 7 minutes. Let me know what you want Speed Ran next. Just post a link to a report in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe. It is helpful motivation to keep creating videos. Happy investing and thank you for watching.